They did fly into the building, of course, they did. And they could have been on automatic pilot. That makes sense. We know that there was a heightened GPS and heightened cell phone activity that is very unusual. Usually the GPS only works it doesn't work at certain altitudes. And at a scale of like 1 to 10, the GPS signal was working at a 10, whereas ordinarily it might work at a 4. See? And so something was helping boost, and it had to be boosted. It couldn't have just spontaneously done this on its own. Something had to be boosting the GPS signal. And it's just a matter of scientific requirement that it had to be boosted, and it was. The cell phone was the same thing. Some people have tried to say that the cell phone conversations did not happen. I do believe they did happen. I do believe that people got through to their spouses. But again, you see that it had to be there had to be some technological boost for it to be done. And I think that the hijackers got a lot of help. They got a lot of help. Oh.
My general view is sort of what I'm asking is, that's what I thought actually happened, was it was both, the planes and the demolition bomb.
Yeah.
But without a lot of information, that's just what seemed to make sense. If you consider problems I'm having, if you consider books like Russ Baker's Family Secrets,
yeah. Yes.
Andy Jacobson's Area 51 that just came out recently, and the last one I just read was Naomi Wolf's The End of America.
Yes.
And
good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just so relevant. So, how can you expect us, knowing the corruption of moral character, which is what I believe what it is. I think fundamentally where we're at is a spiritual crisis, in essence, the big picture.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of interested in you in part of that, because I'm sure there are people that are dedicated in the CIA that are very trustworthy.
Well,
I'm trustworthy in the sense that their motivations are clear. But I think overall, considering all the torture and the long history that it's had, and you can't believe anything. Basically, you can't. You just don't know. There's so much spin with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's not dedicated individuals. I think there are.
Sure.
I don't think everybody's black and white.
Sure.
So, what I'd like to get from you in part is first of all, your picture of the big overall. What's the primary motive? You said the war, but what is the big picture? Who are the big honchos at the top that are directing?
Well, I'd like to answer this on a couple of levels. First of all, the CIA has a long track record of doing false flag operations on itself. And one of the reasons that I may be more trustworthy is that I was an asset, not a CIA director. My CIA handler received $13 million tax-free. Didn't even have to pay $1 in taxes. Is that not the sweetest thing you've ever heard in your life? From the 9/11 investigation of emergency appropriations that were intended for the Iraq to secure Iraq's cooperation. And he took the money, and you've never heard him speak. And when I was under indictment, my own CIA handler refused to speak to my attorneys for 5 years. If he had spoken to my attorneys at any time at all, we could have ended my indictment entirely. But the other thing is that the reason you should trust me is because I paid for this. I was locked up in prison on a military base for a year, and I was held under indictment for 5 years. And the government was so, if you do a little research on my story, you'll find the government was so threatened by what I was going to say that they actually argued this is like a record. There's a history of this. You can confirm this. They wanted to forcibly drug me with Haldol, Ativan, and Prozac, which would have chemically lobotomized me. because they said that I was, they admitted that I was not hallucinating. I do not suffer depression. For those of you who do suffer depression, sorry, but I don't. I don't have mood disturbances. They said I had good eye contact. I was cooperative, smiling. They could not identify anything wrong with me except that I argued that my defense was I had worked in anti-terrorism for 9 years, and I warned about 9/11, and my team warned about 9/11. And they were like, they tried to detain me up to 10 years. They actually petitioned the court for the right, on the Patriot Act, for the right to detain me up to 10 years in prison with no trial and no hearing. Imagine that. The government is arguing that we don't have to give this woman a hearing. We can just lock her up indefinitely. And I was the test case on this, and it was horrible. And they wanted to lock me up and forcibly drug me at the same time so that I would be so destroyed. They told the judge that they had no idea how long my cure was going to take, but they wanted it.
Why weren't you drugged?
The judge in my case was Michael Mukasey. Michael Mukasey later became U.S. Attorney General, and I fought so hard, and my beloved companion, sweet, wonderful Jay Fields, who died of cancer, unfortunately, never lived to see me exonerated. He fought in the blogs, and he fought on alternative radio, because the corporate media refused to cover my story. They didn't want to tell you what was going on. They said that they implied very strongly that I was a religious maniac. And I do believe in God, and I have a spiritual life, yes, I do, but I'm not a religious maniac. I guess a religious maniac would be someone like the Elizabeth Smart rapist, kidnapper, who went into court and was like spouting religious stuff and was standing up and singing hymns in court, stuff like that. They wanted me to. Yeah, it was, and when they realized that there was actually I call it my Amnesty International moment. They had already, the Justice Department had already petitioned to forcibly drug me, and I was waiting for a decision. And one morning I was locked up in prison at this point. I had been held on Carswell Air Force Base for 8 months, and then I was moved to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York for 4 months. And one morning, at 5:30 in the morning, the guard wakes me up, he shakes me, he said, "You're going to court today." And I'm like weeping. I'm thinking that they've got the decision and they're going to like send me back to Carswell to be drugged, and I'm hysterical. I was absolutely hysterical. And I get into the courtroom, and I'm in a holding cage that's about the size of this table. And they come in, my attorney comes in, and he says, "Oh my God, someone has started a blog on your case, and people are writing your judge. They're writing Judge Mukasey. You got to tell your friend to stop doing this." I was like, "Never, no, no way." And I was like, "We are and literally, I grabbed the bars. I was like, "We are never going to stop. We are going to fight to defend this Constitution. You are breaking the law. And we are never going to shut up until this is done." You can tell that crooked prosecutor that he can just go to hell, because we're going to keep talking until, you're never going to shut me up now. This was a mistake. This was a huge mistake that they did this to me. And we went in, and the judge was like, so. And at that point, Jay had published psych records. After my arrest, I had been ordered to have this actually saved me. I had been ordered to attend weekly psychology meetings. I had never had any psychological problems, and I had a year's worth of documentation saying that I suffered no mental illness, no depression, no psychosis, no mania, nothing, no mood disturbances. And these are in the back of my book, so you can actually look at this stuff for yourself, and you can see the papers with your own eyes. And you can read them. The judge was like, "Well, this is extraordinary. You're telling me this woman is incompetent and she's suffering from this grave mental illness, and yet she has all these records which are on the bloody internet. Why are these papers not in my courtroom?" And the judge was like, this is just not going to happen. And at that point, I was saved. because the judge was like, this woman is not cooperative. If I had been cooperative, they would have done it. If I had been passive, they would have done it. But I mean, I'm a fighter, and they still wouldn't give me a hearing. And I mean, I know how to fight. I'm an activist and an asset. Believe me, I know how to fight. And it was like the Patriot Act was so hideous, so big, so powerful, that there was nothing that they were going to let it break through. But Judge Mukasey also did the financial case on the 9/11, the insurance claims for 9/11, for Larry Silverstein, who went to his synagogue. They both attend the same synagogue. Yeah. Cozy. Very cozy.
Did Muhammad Atta willingly sacrifice himself, or didn't he know what was going to happen to him?
I do not know. I do not know. See, I wonder about all these things, because I wonder if they thought that it was like a practice, or if they thought, this was just like, I do not know the answer to that. It's like, it's fascinating to think what they must have thought.
There were foreign newspapers that reported that many of the hijackers are still alive.
Yes.
I think 6 or 7 of them were reported. One is a pilot for the Saudi Arabian Airlines. I believe one lives in Los Angeles. So there was all this, and then there was the report
That's
that
true.
Mohammed, yes. So it doesn't make sense that there were these hijackers that hijacked planes. I mean, obviously something is wrong with this story.
Yeah.
If these people are still alive.
I wonder though if it was those. Yeah. I don't have as an asset. This may frustrate. This is probably going to frustrate you. I'm trained to stop where it's very much compartmentalized, and there are certain things that I know from my own direct personal experience that I can tell you, and then there are other things that I'm taught just to draw a line. And it may drive you crazy, but there's some things that I cannot answer because I don't know. And as an asset, I'm told to stop and to always to distinguish what I actually know from what I don't know. And that's one of the things I don't know. Sorry. But I do believe there were hijackings. But
to hold on to the story that there were hijackings.
Well, I
do
do believe
hijackers alive. I don't know this.
Well, but we don't necessarily know who the hijackers were.
We also have other information that some of the serial numbers of the planes were located several years later, as the planes are still in existence. So there's a lot of really
very
sketchy,
strange.
Very strange. There's a lot of strange. And then that plane that went down in Pennsylvania with no plane parts.
That was shot down.
No plane parts anywhere.
There was a plane that was shot down, and I know that there was a pilot who shot down one of the airplanes, and he is locked up in prison in Florida right now.
What's his name?
I don't know. I could get it for you. I will get it for you. I've been told his name before, and I'm actually doing a radio interview with Michael Herzog tomorrow, who's the one who told me about the guy. And I will get that information, and I will pass it to our friend over here, and we'll get that to you. Because he needs help. The last I heard, he was still in, it could be that, I hope he's been released, but he may have been released by now, but the last I heard he was still in prison, and if he is still in prison, it'd be awfully nice if you guys could help him.
Who's to gain, who's to lose?
Well, I believe, the tragedy was that it was so, before 9/11 ever happened, they already knew about this peace framework, and they already knew that they could have, the United States would receive no punishments at all no punishments. They would not face any problems because of the years of support for the sanctions. The Iraqis wanted the sanctions off so badly that they were going to give the United States everything that they could have wanted. So this is even going on before 9/11 happens. And they were going to give them 1 million American-made automobiles every year. Telecommunications, that would be satellites, phone, TV, the CIA could have been, snooping through all the Middle East phone conversations. It was crazy.